The Roman gladius, so deadly, in close combat you won't believe the tactics. Picture this. A Roman soldier steps inside your sword range where your long weapon becomes useless, drives an 18-inch steel blade between your ribs with surgical precision, and withdraws it before you even realize you're dying. The gladius wasn't just a sword, it was a killing machine designed for one purpose: ending lives as quickly and efficiently as possible in the brutal reality of ancient combat. Welcome back to Chapters in History, where we explore the deadliest weapons from the past. I am your host, and today we're diving into the Roman gladius, a weapon so perfectly designed for close combat that it dominated battlefields for over 600 years. If you love stories of revolutionary weapons and deadly tactics, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because the gladius will change how you think about ancient warfare. From surgical striking techniques to formation fighting, these are the tactics that made 18 inches of steel Rome's ultimate weapon. Chapter 1. The Gladius Revolution. Short sword, massive advantage. The gladius revolutionized ancient warfare by doing something that seemed insane, making swords shorter instead of longer. While other civilizations competed to build longer weapons with greater reach, Romans discovered that the deadliest sword was actually the shortest one, if you knew how to use it properly. The gladius was only 18 to 24 inches long, compared to Celtic longswords that could reach 35 inches, or Greek swords that were often 30+ inches. This seemed like a massive disadvantage in single combat, where reach typically determined victory. But Romans weren't designing weapons for individual duels, they were creating killing tools for coordinated formation fighting. The revolutionary insight was that in tight formations where soldiers fought shoulder to shoulder, long swords became liabilities rather than assets. Celtic warriors with their massive longswords needed room to swing effectively, but Roman legionaries with gladii could kill efficiently in spaces so cramped that longer weapons couldn't be used at all. The gladius was perfectly balanced for rapid thrusting attacks that could penetrate armor and deliver fatal wounds with minimal effort. While enemies needed to wind up for powerful slashing attacks, Romans could strike repeatedly with quick, precise thrusts that were nearly impossible to defend against in close quarters. Roman training transformed this short sword into the most efficient killing tool in the ancient world. Legionaries practiced thousands of hours of thrusting techniques, learning to drive their gladii through armor, between ribs, and into vital organs with deadly precision. Every thrust was calculated to kill quickly and allow immediate withdrawal for the next attack. The psychological impact was devastating. Enemies who expected sword combat to involve dramatic clashing and extended dueling found themselves facing opponents who killed with clinical efficiency, striking faster than the eye could follow, and moving on to the next target before their previous victim had fallen. Chapter 2. Anatomy of a Killer. The Perfect Design. The gladius wasn't just shorter than other swords, it was completely redesigned from the ground up to maximize lethality in the specific conditions where Romans expected to fight. The blade geometry was revolutionary. Instead of the broad, flat designs common in slashing swords, the gladius featured a pronounced central ridge that created incredible structural strength, while concentrating the weapon's weight along the thrusting axis. This made gladius thrusts capable of punching through armor that would stop other weapons. The point was needle-sharp and reinforced to penetrate the toughest materials. Roman gladii could pierce chainmail, punch through leather armor, and even penetrate some types of plate protection. The thrusting point was so effective that it could find gaps in armor that seemed too small for a blade to exploit. The grip was designed for lightning-fast direction changes and repeated striking. Unlike longer swords that required two-handed techniques or elaborate wrist movements, the gladius could be manipulated entirely with forearm and wrist action, allowing for incredibly rapid attack sequences. The balance point was positioned to optimize thrusting power while maintaining control. Roman swordsmiths understood that a thrusting weapon needed different weight distribution than a slashing weapon, and they crafted each gladius to deliver maximum force through the point while remaining maneuverable in tight spaces. The scabbard system was equally innovative. Roman gladia were worn on the right side rather than the left, allowing for faster drawing in formation fighting where left-side positioning would interfere with shield work. The scabbard was designed to hold the sword at the perfect angle for immediate combat readiness. Quality control was obsessive. Roman military contractors produced gladii to exact specifications, ensuring that every weapon met strict standards for metallurgy, balance, and sharpness. A Roman legion's gladii were standardized killing instruments, manufactured with precision that wouldn't be seen again until the Industrial Age. Chapter 3. The Thrust and Withdrawal Technique, Surgical Killing. The gladius was designed around a specific killing technique that Romans perfected into an art form, the thrust and withdrawal sequence that could end lives in milliseconds, while leaving the attacker ready for immediate follow-up strikes. Roman training emphasized short, powerful thrusts, aimed at specific anatomical targets, where the gladius could deliver instantly fatal wounds. Legionaries learned to strike at the throat, heart, liver, and kidneys with surgical precision, targeting organs where even small wounds would cause rapid death. The technique required perfect timing and body mechanics. Romans learned to thrust with their entire body behind the strike, using leg drive and core rotation to multiply the force delivered through the gladius point. This wasn't arm strength, it was full body power channeled through 18 inches of steel. The withdrawal was equally crucial. Romans practiced pulling the gladius free immediately after impact, preventing enemies from grabbing the blade or trapping the weapon in their body. The rapid withdrawal also caused massive additional bleeding, as the blade carved through tissue on its way out. Repeated striking was the key to gladius supremacy. While enemies with longer weapons were committed to single powerful attacks, Romans could deliver multiple lethal thrusts in the time it took an opponent to execute one sword swing. This created overwhelming offensive pressure that few enemies could survive. The angle of attack was calculated for maximum lethality. Romans learned to thrust slightly upward when targeting the torso, allowing the gladius to slip between ribs and penetrate vital organs. The upward angle also made wounds more difficult to treat and more likely to be immediately fatal. Counterattack protection was built into the technique. The gladius thrust was executed from behind the scutum shield, meaning Romans could deliver lethal attacks while remaining almost completely protected from enemy counterstrikes. This allowed for aggressive offensive action with minimal defensive risk. Chapter 4. Formation Fighting, the Killing Machine, Multiplied. The true genius of the gladius wasn't in individual combat. It was how this weapon enabled Roman formations to function as coordinated killing machines, where each soldier's effectiveness multiplied the lethality of every other soldier. In the classic Roman formation, legionaries stood close enough that their shields overlapped, creating an impenetrable wall of protection. But the gladius was short enough that Romans could thrust between their own shields and those of their comrades, striking enemies while remaining completely protected behind their defensive line. The overlapping attack zones were devastating. Enemy warriors facing a Roman formation found themselves targeted by multiple gladii simultaneously, with Romans attacking from directly ahead and from oblique angles where defense was nearly impossible. A single enemy might face thrust attacks from 3 or 4 gladii at once. The mutual protection system allowed for incredible aggression. Because each Roman was protected by his neighbor's shields as well as his own, legionaries could focus entirely on offensive action without worrying about personal defense. This created attack pressure that individual warriors couldn't match. Rotation tactics maximized killing efficiency. When front-rank Romans became fatigued, they could step back while fresh fighters moved forward, all without disrupting the formation's defensive integrity. This meant Roman formations could maintain peak lethality for extended periods, while enemy forces wore down from constant combat stress. The gladius enabled gap fighting techniques that were impossible with longer weapons. When breaks appeared in enemy lines, Romans could pour through openings while still maintaining formation cohesion, using their short swords to devastating effect in the close quarters chaos that followed breakthrough moments. Psychological pressure was overwhelming. Enemies facing Roman formations knew they were confronting not just individual warriors, but an integrated killing system designed to destroy them systematically. The gladius made this system possible by providing the perfect weapon for coordinated close combat. Chapter 5. The SCUTUM-GLADIUS Combination, Perfect Partnership. The gladius achieved its legendary status through its perfect integration with the Roman scutum shield, creating a weapon system that was far more effective than either component used alone. The scutum was a massive curved shield that provided merely complete body protection, while leaving just enough gaps for gladius thrusts. This combination allowed Romans to fight in a completely defensive posture, while simultaneously delivering lethal offensive strikes, something no other ancient weapon system could achieve. Shield punching became a crucial gladius tactic. Romans would use the scutum's iron boss to strike enemies in the face or chest, stunning them and creating openings for gladius thrusts. The shield punch, followed by an immediate gladius strike, became a signature Roman combination that killed thousands of enemies. The gladius could be used for shield manipulation as well as direct attacks. Skilled legionaries learned to hook enemy shields with their gladius points, pulling opposing shields aside to create thrust openings, or exposing enemies to attacks from neighboring Romans. The curved scutum design created natural thrust angles that guided gladius strikes toward enemy vital areas. Romans could use their shields to control enemy positioning while simultaneously lining up perfect thrusting angles that were almost impossible to defend against. Defensive recovery was instantaneous. After delivering a gladius thrust, Romans could immediately return to full defensive posture behind their scutum, making counterattacks extremely difficult. This defensive-offensive cycling allowed Romans to maintain constant pressure while remaining relatively safe. The weapon system enabled Romans to fight effectively in any terrain or conditions where traditional weapons would be less effective. In narrow spaces, thick forests, or urban environments, the scutum-galaxy combination remained fully functional, while longer weapons became clumsy or useless. Chapter 6. Close Quarters Combat, where the gladius ruled. The gladius was specifically designed to dominate the close quarters combat that Romans deliberately created through their tactical approach to warfare. But Roman battle doctrine emphasized closing with the enemy as quickly as possible to negate the advantages of longer weapons and projectiles. Once Romans got inside enemy weapon range, their gladiae became devastatingly superior to any other close combat weapon system. Grappling integration made the gladius even more lethal. Romans trained to combine wrestling techniques with gladius work, using their free hand to control enemy weapons or bodies while striking with the sword. This created fighting combinations that were impossible to counter with single weapon techniques. Armor exploitation was a gladius specialty. The weapon's thrusting design made it incredibly effective at finding gaps in enemy armor, between plates, under arm guards, through helmet vision slits. Romans learned to identify these weak points instantly and target them with surgical precision. Multiple opponent tactics allowed single Romans to engage several enemies simultaneously. The gladius's rapid striking capability and defensive integration meant that skilled legionaries could fight effectively against multiple attackers in ways that would be suicidal with longer weapons. Environmental combat was where the gladius truly excelled. In buildings, forests, or rough terrain where movement was restricted, the gladius remained fully effective, while longer weapons became liabilities. Romans could fight efficiently in spaces where their enemies' weapons couldn't be used properly. The gladius also enabled Romans to fight effectively on ships, in tunnels, and during siege warfare, any environment where space was limited and precise, rapid strikes were more valuable than powerful swings. Chapter 7. Psychological warfare, the fear factor. The gladius became a psychological weapon as much as a physical one, creating a reputation for failure that often defeated enemies before combat even began. The clinical efficiency of gladius kills was profoundly disturbing to enemies, who expected sword combat to be dramatic and extended. Instead of heroic dueling, they faced opponents who killed with mechanical precision and moved on immediately to the next target. The sound of gladius combat was distinctively terrifying. Instead of the clashing of blade-on-blade fighting, gladius battles featured the wet sounds of steel penetrating flesh, followed by the immediate groans of dying enemies. This acoustic signature became associated with Roman invincibility. Close quarters killing created psychological trauma that affected entire enemy armies. Warriors who survived encounters with Roman gladius work often became combat ineffective due to the psychological impact of witnessing such efficient, impersonal killing techniques. The gladius reputation preceded Roman armies into battle. Enemy forces knew they would face weapons designed specifically for killing rather than fighting, creating pre-battle anxiety that affected combat performance, even among experienced warriors. Roman confidence in their gladii was visible and intimidating. Legionaries approached combat with calm certainty that their weapons and techniques were superior, creating psychological pressure that many enemies couldn't match. Chapter 8. Training. Creating gladii masters. Roman gladii's training was so intensive and systematic that it created professional killers whose skills with the weapon approached perfection. Training began with wooden swords against wooden posts, allowing Romans to practice thousands of thrusts without dulling or damaging actual weapons. This repetitive training developed muscle memory that made proper gladius technique automatic under combat stress. Anatomical training taught legionaries exactly where to strike for maximum lethality. Romans learned human anatomy specifically to identify the most effective target areas for gladius thrusts, turning killing into a precise science rather than random violence. Sparring with live weapons was conducted using blunted gladii to allow full contact practice without excessive casualties. This training gave Romans experience with the actual weight, balance, and handling characteristics of their combat weapons. Formation training integrated gladius work with shield techniques and unit coordination. Romans practiced fighting as coordinated teams, where individual gladius skills combined into formation lethality that exceeded the sum of its parts. Scenario training prepared Romans for specific combat situations, fighting in buildings, on ships, in forests, or against different types of enemies. This specialized training ensured that gladius techniques remained effective under any conditions Romans might encounter. The training intensity was legendary. Romans practiced gladius techniques daily throughout their military service, constantly refining their skills and learning new applications for their weapon system. Final chapter. Legacy. The sword that conquered the world. The gladius established principles of weapon design and combat techniques that influenced military thinking for centuries, and created innovations that modern combat systems still incorporate. The concept of weapons optimization for specific tactical roles became central to military equipment development. The gladius proved that weapons should be designed for their intended use, rather than general combat applications, a principle that remains relevant in modern military procurement. Close-quarters combat techniques developed for gladius fighting became foundational training for soldiers throughout history. The emphasis on rapid, precise strikes aimed at vital targets influenced edged weapon training programs for over 1,000 years. The integration of offensive and defensive systems, combining the gladius with the scutum, established the importance of weapon systems rather than individual weapons. This concept became central to military equipment design and remains crucial in contemporary warfare. Formation fighting techniques enabled by the gladius influenced tactical development long after Roman legions disappeared. The ability to maintain defensive protection while delivering coordinated offensive strikes became a template for infantry tactics that lasted into the gunpowder era. The gladius also established manufacturing standards and quality control procedures that influenced weapons production for centuries. Most importantly, the gladius proved that tactical innovation and training could overcome apparent disadvantages in weapon design. This lesson, that superior technique and application can defeat superior equipment, remains relevant in military thinking today. Conclusion. And there you have it, the Roman gladius, a weapon so perfectly designed for close combat that it dominated ancient battlefields for over 600 years. This wasn't just a short sword, it was a revolutionary weapon system that turned killing into a precise science and made Roman legions the most feared infantry in history. The gladius proves that the most effective weapons are often those designed for specific purposes rather than general use. Roman success came from understanding exactly what they needed their weapon to do and creating the perfect tool for that job. What do you think? Does the gladius deserve its reputation as one of history's most effective weapons? Can you think of modern weapons that apply similar principles of specialized design and systematic training? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient weapons technology, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Next week, we'll explore another revolutionary weapon that changed the course of military history, through innovative design and deadly effectiveness. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most effective solutions are the ones that seem counterintuitive until you understand the genius behind them.